Hey, what's up, guys? So today I'm talking about hearing God's voice. A story that came to mind concerning hearing God's voice was when I was in high school. Me and my friends oftentimes would go to this carnival in the fall, and we had a pretty big group of friends. So a lot of times we would break up for at some point throughout the night, and we would just ride different rides and kind of hang out. And there always came a point throughout the night when one of us would begin to hear our names called out in the midst of the crowd, right? So our different at the different parts of our group would be looking for each other, right, and trying to come back together and do something together. And in the midst of the crowd, it's funny how when you know somebody's voice, even in the midst of a crowd, you can pick them out, right? So there were thousands of people at this carnival, but when my friend began to call my name, I always was able to discern that it was his voice. And I think it's very true in our own lives. A lot of times in life, we kind of find ourselves in a crowd of distraction, right? We find ourselves so caught up with work or so caught up with watching TV or going binge watching a series or just doing things that aren't necessarily bad, but maybe aren't necessarily the best at helping us to hear God's voice. And in the midst of all the distraction, we sometimes begin to struggle to hear God's voice when we do go and try to spend time with Him intentionally, right? And I think that a lot of times in life, it's not a matter of whether or not God is speaking, because I believe God is always speaking. I think Scripture backs that up. I think a lot of times it's a matter of if we are listening to God intentionally. And it's a matter of what voices are we allowing into our life in addition to God's voice, right? And sometimes it's just a matter of you just turning down the volume of the other things, right? So that might be maybe not spending as much time binge watching Stranger Things or other series, or not spending as much time just listening to music or secular music, but taking time to intentionally seek God instead. And so there's a verse, it's Matthew 4:4, it says, "Man does not live on bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And this is a great scripture because it talks about how we have this desperate need to spend time with the Lord. And when we're not spending time with the Lord, our soul begins to starve. And if you are in a place where your soul is starving, it becomes very difficult to hear God's voice because you are not cultivating an environment, an atmosphere within your own life where the other voices are turned down and God's voice is speaking the loudest. And so for those of you who may struggle to hear God's voice and oftentimes feel like God isn't speaking to you, it might not be so much that God isn't speaking to you, or even that you can't hear His voice, right? Or you don't know how to hear His voice. It might just be that you need to separate yourself or turn off all the distractions for a season. Maybe do a fast or just spend more time with Him intentionally throughout the day. And then you will be able to clearly hear God's voice, because Jesus says that my sheep know my voice, right? I'm telling you, God is pretty loud. And if you're listening, you will hear Him because He's faithful to speak, and He's always speaking. And so that's my encouragement for you guys this morning. I hope that it encourages you. I hope that it maybe gives you something to think about and chew on. And if you have something that you want to talk about, there's a bug flying around my face right now. If you want to just kind of comment on some of the things I was talking about in the comments, I would love to talk with you and chop it up with you. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.